So here's my Ubuntu host, and I have my Docker images running. What they're effectively doing is presenting up these web applications. So I have my Jenkins container and my Marathon application. Marathon application is just for demo purposes. It was built to be vulnerable, and we're going to show you how the build process identifies those failures in security and also how to fix them. So from Jenkins, if you're not familiar with Jenkins, great free open source tool for automation, pretty widely used. It is not the only solution. I have my Marathon application in here as a project, and I've gone through a few builds. Some of them worked, some of them did not. I have all my stages mapped out from preparation, build, code analysis, integration, dynamic scanning, shutting it down, and then producing results. What's really cool about this, or at least what I think is really cool about this demo, is how I've built the security components into it, and also how we've capitalized on the use of quality gates. And I'll show you what quality gates look like here in a second. But first and foremost, we'll just review the builds real quick. So we have our different build. And if we go through and click on each step, if you're not familiar, we'll go through preparation, where we're pulling our data down from GitHub. We're going to build it with our Maven platform. We're going to do some code analysis. And here's where we're pulling in the SpotBugs and security tools to evaluate that code. It's a little difficult to see all of that, but just understand that it is happening in the background. After that, we're going to go through some integration testing and startup. This is just preparing the environment. And then we're going to go through a dynamic scanning exercise. And what we're doing there is effectively running OWASP ZAP attacks using curl commands and shell scripting. So we're dynamically assessing the application as we're running. Then we're going to shut down that test and report the results. So shutdown, not very interesting. And the results will be interesting because it will either succeed or fail. And that's where the quality gates come in. So if I were to go back to my application, I have my quality gates, and this is my pipeline. And if I scroll all the way down to this build, you can see all the commands that I was demonstrating in the build process. And then when we look at the results, we're looking to capture that data. And this little line right here is what determines whether or not my build will succeed or fail. And what I have here is a bigger screen that I can show you very quickly. That in the stage phase, if I were to configure my quality gates, I can add the lines to this that say if I hit this threshold for failures, then I want to mark the build as unstable. In the first pipeline that I showed you here, or in the first build that I showed you, it succeeded. Well, it succeeded, but if we look at the results, it should not have succeeded. This application has a ton of issues, and I'll show you some of them to give you some bearing on what the alerts and the warnings were. So SpotBugs, FindSecBugs, and FindBugs all identified some code flaws, one of which was path traversal issue. And if I go down and step into the application and the vulnerability, it'll tell me at this line of code, I've introduced a security vulnerability. So here's what's vulnerable about it. And here's how you go about fixing that. And if I'm in security or if I'm in development, we might say that's a false positive. So naturally, you're going to have someone have to understand what that issue is. And if you don't understand what path traversal is, it basically means that your application has introduced code that exposes data that should not be exposed. So I go and verify that that particular issue is vulnerable to path traversal. And to prove it, here's my Etsy password file from my Docker image. So the code did a good job of identifying the flaw, identifying the corrective action, and we verified that it is not a false positive. So that's just one. If we go back to SpotBugs, we can also take a look at some other candidates. Maybe SQL injection as an example. That's pretty common attack vector. So let's dive into that code a little bit, and it'll take me right down to the application and tell me, here's the vulnerable code, here's the solution. And not only that, here's a number of references. So that, that's security built into my pipeline.